It's all made up. And I said, wait till you see. Wait till you see. So I get on it with him, and the thing is moving stronger than ever. It literally feels like, it doesn't feel like a slight magnet is moving underneath it. It feels like hands are grabbing it and it's jerking and it's stopping. And it's stopping to the point where it's like shaking at the end. It's like very alive when he gets on it. So he's like, whoa, I have like superpowers too. I said, wow, this is insane. Like, it was strong when I would do it. Then when we would do it together, it was even more strong. So instantly he gets drawn into it because he had no context for what this was. He didn't believe in it. And then it just started working. We didn't even have to, like, we hover your hands above it. You don't touch it. We would hover it high and it would still just go off. So it was pretty crazy. And so he got enthralled with it and just kept asking questions all during the night. And this is when I first started dancing, and I had to go to work that weekend. But I let him play on it, and I didn't know there's a rule that when you play on a Ouija board, you never play on it alone. And so I got tired, and I said, peace out, I'm going to bed, and he just continued to play. And then when he decided he wanted to go to bed, he said he lay down, and he saw this swirl of smoke above his head, and it was just like a swirl that had faces that were morphing in and out, and they were coming down towards him and they were going back up, and their faces were changing. They would laugh, and then they would get really close to his face, and then they would suck back into this swirl. And they were all different kinds of faces. He said some of them were fat, some of them were skinny. They all were scary, and they were all laughing. And then they would look at each other. So the faces would look at each other and laugh at him in front of him. And then they would look at him and then laugh. And then they said he said it started to get lower and kind of go like a tunnel, almost like what you would see like a tornado. And it went right to his head. And he said he felt the suction go into his head. And then he said, ever since that point, I haven't felt like myself. He goes, I'm hearing voices. I'm feeling these impulses to do things that are really outside of myself. He goes, I know it's not me, but I just want to do stuff, and bad stuff, like bad thoughts are coming to my head. And so I was like, oh, this doesn't sound good.
I'm sorry, bro.
Didn't sleep all night. So let's just think about this logically. If you get sleep, you'll be fine. That's what I told him. So he kind of looked at me in a way that really scared me. It was almost like a trance. It looked like he was in a trance, and he started to look at me like he wanted to kill me. And I said, Daniel, snap out of it. What's going on? What are you thinking? Hello, it's Julie, it's your sister. And he's like, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. And he goes, the voices were telling me it'd be so easy to kill. I could just snap your neck. And I go, what? You need sleep. So anyway, I got scared. I closed up my apartment, and every time I closed up my apartment, I'm very OCD. I like things to be clean and neat. And so I put everything in its place, and I wrap everything up, and I leave because I'm closing it up for the weekend because I'm going to be sleeping over at my friend's house. As I dance, on Friday, Saturday night, I would sleep over. And so I closed up the apartment and we left. And everything was fine at work. I totally forgot about it until I came back like Sunday morning early. And I come back to my apartment, and I come into the house, and I could feel the energy was off. There was something there that I could feel was very intense. And it felt like hatred coming from the walls. Like eyes were staring at me. And I felt very uncomfortable in this place that was my home, and it was weird. And I didn't feel alone. And this place was very small. You could see the kitchen from the living room, and even, the kitchen from the bedroom. So it was a 1-bedroom apartment. And all the kitchen cabinets were open. So all the doors were open, which was very crazy for me because I'm very OCD, and I know I didn't leave it that way. And then I go into the bathroom. I'm hearing this noise in the bathroom, and my electric toothbrush is bouncing around inside the sink. And the crazy part was my toothbrush was broken, and I actually had to get a new one. So it wasn't working. And so here it was turned on with it unplugged and not working. And all of a sudden now it's working on its own, bouncing around. I'm like, oh, that's weird. What's going on? And then I go into my bedroom, and on my bed is a picture of, it's like a photo album of me and my brother when we were little. It's laid out, opened up, as if someone has been drinking coffee and looking at this photo album. But the crazy part was this photo album was in the back of my closet that was broken. So I had those big, heavy doors that were sliders, but the slider was broken, so you had to lift the door up and move it. And so I had this photo album, which was a baby album. I didn't need it, so it didn't need to be in the front. It was in the back of my closet. So all the way in the back of my closet, somebody had gone up there, pulled it out, and laid it out on the bed. And it looked like there was an impression of a body, like somebody had just left the room to answer the phone or something. And I walked in on this scene where it looked like someone was looking at this picture of me and my brother when we were little. And so I got really creeped out because that picture, we would always say, look, it's the angel picture, because there was a flash that was over me and my brother. And I said, look, we have an angel looking over us. And so, wow, that's very weird that picture was the one. So I call my brother and I'm thinking, just going to call him to make sure. Did you come back here? I know I didn't give you the key, but, you know, like somehow did you get back into the apartment? Because stuff is not looking like it normally does. He goes, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you called me. Of course I didn't come to your apartment. I don't even have a key. How could I get in? He goes, I've been up since I saw you last. I haven't got a wink of sleep. And I'm going, oh my gosh, he sounded frantic and crazy. And he goes, you've got to come here. It's getting worse. The powers are getting worse. Now they're typing messages through my hands. I'm sitting down at the computer. I'm not thinking anything. And I'm getting all these downloads. I'm hearing all these voices. You got to come. You got to help me. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So I clean up my apartment. I get out of there and I go see my brother, and he is in a horrible state. I didn't think the person could age within a weekend, but he looked like he'd aged like 10 years. And he didn't even look like the same person. He hadn't slept, hadn't taken a shower. He was just disheveled and frantic. And long story short, we found out because we played with the Ouija board, we'd opened up a portal, and he got demonically possessed during that time. And we took him to a pastor to help out, but our pastor was Southern Baptist, and they don't believe in demonic possession or deliverance or anything like that. They don't believe in spiritual warfare, which is insane to me. So this pastor didn't know what to do. So he just called out to God and he said, God, what do I do? And the pastor said to him, Daniel, look at me. He's like, I don't know what to do, but I just felt like the Lord said, look at me. And so Daniel tries to look at him and he's like, and he can't focus his eyes. And his eyes is going up to the ceiling. Then it's like his head's jerking around, violently jerking around. And I'm thinking, he's going to kill the guy. He's going to kill my brother. I see my brother's neck just stretch out really long. And I see these things like punching out through his neck. So I see action in his neck. And I'm going, what is happening here? And he's like choking. So something's like pulling down his tongue or something. He's choking. He's like, oh, I can't talk. And I go, you're going to kill him. He's like turning colors. And so he pushes me out of the room, says, get out of here. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm in the hallway. I'm like, God, if you're real, like, I don't know how to help my brother. All I just know is that you got to help him. You got to help him. You got to help him. And I just kept saying that over and over again. And I hear this loud scream come out. And then maybe like 3 minutes later, they open up the door. And my brother looks a lot better. His eyes aren't clear, and he seems like he's a little bit more alert, and he's just relieved to get out. So he's like, I'm so glad that's over, and I can't believe that happened. And he's just honestly traumatized by it all. And we're driving home, and we're in the car together, and we're looking around, and the greens were just looking really green, and the sky was looking so blue. It almost looked like we were in The Wizard of Oz when everything had turned Technicolor. And it looked so vibrant and so beautiful in contrast to the darkness and the depression and the not getting sleep and the worry and the fear. It literally looked like there was a filter of darkness on our life that got lifted off. And now all of a sudden we're seeing Technicolor. So I was just looking around and I go, Daniel, life is so beautiful. Why have we never noticed this before? And he goes, you're right, it is. He goes, actually, this isn't life. This is not real life. He said, they're tricking us. And I said, no. You're tired. He goes, no, there's still more in me. I could feel it. This is a trick. And so he's like, let's go back. And I go, you want to go back there? He goes, I have to go back there. Let's go back. So we turned around, we go back, and there was even more in him. And so I don't know what the pastor did the second time, but he wouldn't let me in the room. And then Daniel came out and he looked even better. And so he said, I don't want to talk about it. He wouldn't talk about it. In fact, to this day, he still doesn't talk about it. So I don't know what happened, but he had gotten a further deliverance. And after that happened, he ended up going to a church that believed in deliverance, and he had a minister walk him through the process of deliverance, and he got an intimate relationship with the Lord, and he began to align his life with the Lord, totally separate from me. I was doing my own thing. So I just thought this was a him problem, not a me problem. And so now these demonic spirits that entered my brother had also entered me. But their plan was to remain dormant because they would have more power in me if they lie dormant and continue to fool me. So I was living under deception, thinking in my head I could get away with dancing as long as I didn't do anything bad, right? What's bad? Bad is according to God's law, not according to Julia's law. So I was still sinning, right? So I opened up a portal of sexual sin. So over the course of 12 years, dancing for 200-300 guys a night, can you just imagine how infestation can happen? Also, too, with Playboy. These are international magazines going all around the world. It's pornography. That is sin. That is something against the covenant of marriage. It's not what God has for you. So now I've opened up a portal in that. So I've opened up so many portals. Who knows the source of why it all happened? But we know it all happened from sin, and it all happened from me being in rebellion against God. So what happened with Playboy is when I went to this big photo shoot, they sent me all these clothes, this PR stuff. T-shirts to throw up to the crowd, T-shirts to wear for me, and jackets and all this stuff with your logo on it. And so what I did is I brought my T-shirts and I customized them, made them a little sexier, and I had custom words put on the back that said, God loves Playboy. I literally put that on my shirts, and I was going to wear that for part of my photo shoot when we did our vignette for passing out the beads and stuff. And so I know that God didn't want that to happen, right? And Playboy was fine with it. They're fine, they were fine with whatever. I told myself that I was going to be the first Christian playmate. That was going to be my thing. That you can love God and still be a Playboy model. How blasphemous is that? But that's how deceived I was in thinking that I could do it my way. That wasn't God's plan. So he sabotaged that plan right before that happened. I was supposed to wear those beads, and that never ended, that T-shirt, and that never ended up happening. So
these demons did not manifest, but they influenced you in certain decisions like that, which is like one of the most blasphemous things you could have done at that time in your life. But you thought that this was a righteous thing. So they influenced you in that way, but they only started manifesting at that photo shoot. And who knows what that looked like. And I wish we could have a picture from somebody that was a witness to what that actually looked like. But I guess we're probably never going to know unless you able to get a hold of someone if you even want to do that.
I actually tried to get a hold of a photographer. He's very private, and I reached out to him on Facebook, and I just said, hey, this is Jules, I'm okay, but I wanted to know if you remember this time, and I never heard back from him. But I hope to one day connect with him and hear what the other side was like.
Yeah. But now let's go back to what happened after that photo shoot, because you were dropped off at the mental hospital, and can you explain how long you stayed there and what happened after you came back home?
I really don't know how long I stayed there. I think it was like 2.5 weeks, but it wasn't very clear to me because they had me on lithium. I can't remember. There was another one, Resperdal. I mean, very heavy drugs that make you totally out of it. So I'm not quite sure, but I do remember my mom came eventually to pick me up. And that was the first idea that I got of who I was. Because all the way up until that, my brain felt like mush. And I just felt like every day was the same. And yeah, so I just didn't know who I was, where all my friends went. It was just this big fog of confusion. And then when I saw my mom, I started to get a context of like, oh, that's my mom. I'm Julia. What am I doing here? So things started to get a little bit clearer because I had an idea now. So when I saw my mom, she just wept. She just looked at me and wept, and she said, "What happened to my girl? What happened to my girl? What happened to you?" And so she just was crying, and I just remember hugging her and just feeling like a little girl again, like somebody cares. She's crying. Somebody cares about me. Somebody loves me. And I just remember smelling her hair and feeling like a little girl, and I was just like, Mommy, I'm lost. Just feeling like, what happened? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. So she was crying and I was crying, and she said, well, we'll just figure it out together. But I got to get you home. And so we went on the plane together, and it was very quiet. And yeah, so I went back home, and she dropped me off at my apartment, and I ended up taking some of my savings that I was working so hard to save for this apartment building. And I just paid for my rent a year in advance because I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't want to go back to work because everybody was waiting for my issue to come out. Everyone wanted to know what happened. All my customers, management was all excited because now they had a playmate or a play, you know what I mean, working at the club. And what was I going to say? You know, I was just completely demoralized and embarrassed. And I didn't even have an explanation. I didn't know myself what had happened. So I just went and sold all my furniture, pretty much only had a bed, sold all my jewelry. And I didn't want to kill myself, but I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't eat. I was down to 75 pounds, and I was losing half my hair. I was a real wreck. And it got so bad where I wasn't answering my phone, and my friends from the club I had ended up taking some of my savings that I was working so hard to save for this apartment building. And I just paid for my rent a year in advance because I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't want to go back to work because everybody was waiting for my issue to come out. Everyone wanted to know what happened. All my customers, management was all excited because now they had a playmate or a play, you know what I mean, working at the club. And what was I going to say? You know, I was just completely demoralized and embarrassed. And I didn't even have an explanation. I didn't know myself what had happened. So I just went and sold all my furniture, pretty much only had a bed, sold all my jewelry. And I didn't want to kill myself, but I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't eat. I was down to 75 pounds, and I was losing half my hair. I was a real wreck. And it got so bad where I wasn't answering my phone, and my friends from the club I had a couple of other good girlfriends. One of them reached out and said, "You're not answering your phone." So she came to my house and just, you know, kept knocking on the door until I answered. And she went and sold all my furniture, pretty much only had a bed, sold all my jewelry. And I didn't want to kill myself, but I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't eat. I was down to 75 pounds.
Fucking hell, I didn't even see that
losing
one.
half my hair. I was a real wreck. And it got so bad where I wasn't answering my phone, and my friends from the club were, I had a couple of other good girlfriends. One of them reached out and said, "You're not answering your phone." So she came to my house and just, kept knocking on the door until I answered. And she said, "Oh my gosh, you don't even look like you anymore." She goes, "Julia." She just started weeping. She's like, "Oh my gosh." And so she just said, "Let me in your house." And she saw I had like no food and I was sleeping on my mattress. She just slept on the mattress with me all night and just held me and cried with me. She told me, "I don't want you to give up on, like you're giving up. You're a fighter. Why are you giving up?" And I said, "I have nothing to live for. I worked so hard. Everything's a mess. What am I going to do? How am I going to explain myself?" She says, "I don't know, but you have a lot to live for. You're young. You can piece yourself together again." And she left, and she came back later on that night with a Tiffany's bracelet. It was her favorite thing that she had. She wore hers all the time. She bought me one. She said, I want you to know you're so valuable. I went out to get this for you and want you to know that I think you're valuable." And she just loved on me, and that gave me hope that maybe I could end up showing back at the strip club or trying to work my way out of the hole that I was in.
Fuck off, man.
So yeah, my life was pretty bad, and she went back to T and said, "You did this to her, and she might not live because of you, and you're going to be responsible for that." And so T came over, and she said, she just begged me and cried, "Will you forgive me?" And of course I'd forgive you. I wasn't in love with her. So yeah, my life was pretty bad, and she went back to T and said, "You did this to her, and she might not live because of you, and you're going to be responsible for that." And so T came over, and she said, she just begged me and cried, "Will you forgive me?" And of course I'd forgive you. I wasn't in love with that guy at all. It was the friendship part, the betrayal part that just really hurt. And I loved her daughter, and she just said, "My daughter misses you." And of course, my heart's just like, so she said, "Come with me. I'll take care of you. I will heal you. You got a family. We're not going to leave you like this." And so there was that thing again, that family. That's such a trigger word for me because it's been very hard to feel like you have to do life by yourself. And so I wanted family. And so I said, "Yeah, I don't want to live, and I'll go back to your house." And so I slept on her floor for, I don't know, a few months, like maybe 3 months. I feel like you have to do life by yourself. Not my betrayal part that just really hurt. This that maybe I could end up showing back at the strip club or trying to work my way out of the hole that I was in. So yeah, my life was pretty bad, and she went back to T and said, "You did this to her, and she might not live because of you, and you're going to be responsible for that." And so T came over, and she said, she just begged me and cried, "Will you forgive me?" And of course I forgive you. I wasn't in love with that guy at all.
Just dropped a load of fucking stuff, some rare ones and everything. So if anyone can get to where I am. The betrayal part that just really hurt. And I loved her daughter, and she just said, "My daughter misses you." And of course, my heart's just like, so she said, "Come with me. I'll take care of you. I will heal you. You got a family. We're not going to leave you like this." And so there was that thing again, that family. That's such a trigger word for me because it's been very hard to feel like you have to do life by yourself. And so I wanted family, and so I said, "Yeah, I don't want to live, and I'll go back to your house." And so I slept on her floor for, I don't know, a few months, like maybe 3 months, and then I ended up just getting healthy because my goddaughter was there. I was praying with her, reading the Bible. That was making me feel better. And I was eating food because I wasn't going to starve myself in front of her. I wanted to be a good example.
and the light was coming in from the windows because they didn't want to shut it out. I was sleeping without, with the curtains drawn all day long. So I was starting to get back to being healthy again, gaining weight.
So I just want to make sure that we get this right. So T is this friend that used to be your best friend that cheated on you with your boyfriend, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And she said something that is interesting because she said she would take care of it. And she tried. So can you explain how Santeria was mixed in with your whole situation, which was already bad? It was getting better, but then that got all mixed into it. So can you explain that whole ordeal?
What ended up happening is she invited me into her home, and I did not know the extent of what a witch that she was. When I lived with her, I realized the extent and the depths of her being involved with Santeria. So she lived in an apartment that had 3 levels. A top level, which is her level, and her mother-in-law lived in the bottom level, and then there was a basement. And in the basement, they were so hardcore Santeria people that she actually picked through the basement foundation and took the concrete out and just made it a dirt floor. And in Santeria, being in a dirt floor is really important. And so her mother-in-law taught her how to do rituals so she could be the top earner. But her mother-in-law also had her do all these rituals to make more money, to get this or whatever.
No way.
When I got to her house and after I started to get healthy, she comes up to me and says, "I want to give you a present." And I said, "Okay, well, you've done a lot for me, and I'm so grateful. I'm going to go back to work and make money. I'm going to pay you for rent and stuff. I don't want you buying me food. I'm getting better." And she's like, "Well, I want to still give you a gift." And so, gifts are kind of hard because it's one of my love languages. So it's very interesting that she worded it as a gift.
Get on the fucking plane, get on the fucking plane, get on the fucking plane,
and
we got on the plane.
But she said, I created this circumstance, so I want to help undo this circumstance. So I'm going to give you the spiritual cleansing ritual. And I paid for this thing. It's an all-day thing. And I really want you to go and see my mother-in-law. So I was like, oh, okay. I had no idea that this basement was the way that it was. But she's like, okay, you need to take a bath and then put on these clothes and then go down the stairs to the basement. And I go down the stairs to the basement and it's got this dark feeling. And I'm like, I don't know about this, but I don't want to be rude. I'm not going to back out now. And there's a dirt floor and she's having me sit in the middle of a dirt floor. She covers my eyes. She covers my head. And then I hear the sound of a chicken squawking. And then I hear crunching. And then I feel this warm, substance kind of oozing down my neck and my hair. And come to find out, it's blood. It's chicken blood all over me. I'm knee deep in a ritual. I didn't know this. I'm just thinking it's a gift of a spiritual cleansing. I had no idea what this was, And so this is happening, and she leaves me in the basement because she's talking to these gods. She's talking to these Santeria spirits, consulting with them, asking them, I don't know what she's asking them, but she tells me later on, all right, you are fully accepted into this realm. If you want to take it, you can be very high up in Santeria. They are very receptive to you being part of this religion. And so I want to gift you these beads, and we did a bunch of ceremonies. I don't know what she said over me, but she said, I want to invite you to come in further because I want to train you up in this. And I'm like, okay. I didn't want to be rude, so I took the beads and I said, I got to think about this. And she goes, yeah, think about it. And she goes, I'm going to give you a few days to think about it. And I go, okay. So I go in the bathroom and I'm cleaning up this blood and I'm looking in the mirror. Again, I'm like, who are you? What is happening? This is not even you. I didn't even look like myself. And I'm just crying now because my spirit is so grieved. I have blood on me. my life is just so bad. I'm living on the floor of my friend's apartment, and I'm just like beyond myself right at this point. And then something rises up in me, and I just say, no, I can't hold these things. I can't even have them in my hand anymore. So I call her and I say, I'm so sorry. I really appreciate you trying to help me. I said, I don't need 3 days to think about this. I know that this is not for me. I can't take these. I don't want them. I don't want anything to do with this. And I appreciate all your kindness and your generosity, but I have to say a firm no on this one. And so she says, okay, are you sure? Think about it. I said, no, I'm positive. Please don't ask me again. I cannot do this. I have no peace about it. And so she leaves, and then T's boyfriend comes around, and he was a high priest in this thing. And he says, I knew it. He said, there's something about you. There's a light about you. He goes, there's a power around you. And I knew you couldn't do it. This is good for you. Keep following that path. And I'm looking at him thinking, why are you saying good for me? Why are you in this? You know, if you know that this is not good. So I said, okay. He goes, you're going to do something great in your life. I always knew you would. And he goes, you're going to keep doing something good in your life. I said, okay, thanks, Leo. So he leaves. And yeah, that was the end of that. And soon after that circumstance, I started dating because I started getting healthy again. I went back to work. This is my first time of ever being on the dating scene. And during that course, I met John, my husband. So I get set up on a date, and we end up going out on our first date. And I come back, and I'm really excited because we just hit it off. And it was just the flow of the Holy Spirit. I just felt so good when I was in his presence. I just knew this was the one that I've been praying for. And he had just did a cover of a magazine called, I forgot what the name of the magazine, but he was on the cover of this magazine. Oh, Muscle and Fitness. And so he had a stack of them in the back of his car. And I said, oh, can I grab one of those? I want to show my friend Leo, the picture. He goes, yeah, sure. So I come home from my date. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the guy that I'm dating. He's so great. He's so nice. And Leo looks at me. He goes, ooh. And I'm like, why are you making that face? He goes, oh, he's a handsome guy. Good for you. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I had the magazine on the coffee table, and T comes in the room. And she goes, what's all the commotion? I go, yeah, look at this guy that I'm seeing. I'm so excited. He's so nice. And she looks at me. She goes, just this look of pure rage. She couldn't even control her face. She was so angry. And then Leo looks at me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why he looked at me that way. Like, he knew that was going to happen. And I'm like, oh man. He goes, you better watch yourself. And I'm thinking, what? So anyway, over the course of me and dating John, she stopped talking to me, which we live in this little apartment, and it's hard when you're passing in the hallway. She's not talking to me now. She's locking me out of the house. She's hiding my items of clothes. And so I'm getting scared because I know what she's capable of. Because now at this point I'm going, I wonder if she did all these curses on me, for all this stuff to happen to me. So I know what she's involved with. And so I say to John, you got to help me find an apartment because I got to get out of this place because this is not going to end well. So that's what ended up happening with her.
Okay, so now you found an apartment with your now husband, who at the time you were just dating, and shortly after you ended up being married, and you lived together for 6 years, and that was seemed to be a fairly decent part of your life. Now, we talked about a bunch of chaotic things, but that was fairly stable. But that took a sudden stop when one of your mutual friends tragically died, and all hell broke loose, even more so than it ever did in your life, which is crazy to think of when we hear about your whole story, but it did. So can you tell us what happened on that day that you learned the news that your friend had passed?
Yeah, so I had been working for a while still, and so it was great because John was like a partner in this. And the amazing part of how God works, and I wish I could share the story of how we met and all that God did with that. was that God allowed him to have the same history as me. So he was a stripper in college. So when I eventually shared with him that I danced, he didn't judge me or put me in a category. And all of his friends, when they found out that I was a stripper, they said, you shouldn't marry her. She's a waste. She's trash. And he's like, no, I see her. I know who she is. And we got married. And I just love that God allowed him to have that history so he didn't put me in a category. And he had the same dreams of real estate that I did. Actually, John had his real estate license. So when I shared that I wanted to do investment properties, he said, that's my dream too. I'd love to do that. And that was our plan, you know. We were going to get an apartment building and do this thing together. So by the time that our friend had passed away, I was doing well financially, but I was also getting this weird anxiety every time I would go to work. This weird conviction about, it was like cursing our marriage somehow, because I had to lie to people to tell them, oh no, I'm not married, or I'm not, you know, girls would gossip at the club and say, oh, why would you want to dance with somebody who's married? You know, so I'd have to lie and be like, no, I'm not married, da, da, da. And I just felt like something about it just felt really off after I got married, and it was getting worse and worse by the year. And so John's friend had passed away, and I was alone in our condo downtown. And we were living in this big high rise where you could see it was just floor to ceiling windows all the way around. And I just felt so lonely and so grieved in my spirit. And what came up for me was this feeling of, are you ready to die? That's what came up for me. And I just kept wrestling with the thought, am I ready to die? And I knew in my spirit I was not ready to die, because I felt like I knew that the job was taking me down a very bad road. So I wrestled with that feeling all night. And then finally, I got this deep impression of read your Bible. And I'm like, read my Bible? I'm kind of arguing with this. Like, I haven't looked at a Bible in years, but my mom had gifted me a Bible, and it was in its box. And instantly in my mind, I knew exactly where it was. It was like I got a picture of where it was. And I'm like, okay. So I go to that place, and the Bible's actually there. So I dust it off, and I'm like cracking it open. You know, when you open up a new Bible, it's hard to like flip the pages because the gold makes it stick together. So I'm flipping the pages, and I said, God, if you have anything to say, just say it to me now. And I open up the Bible and I do this. They say not to do that, but I do believe sometimes God will speak to you that way. And I landed on a verse. My finger landed on the verse that says, if your eye offends you, cut it out. It's better to go into heaven with one eye than to hell with two eyes. And I said, oh gosh. I knew that convicted me, because I felt like it was my job that was offending God. I knew I wasn't trusting him. And so I said, that makes me uncomfortable. God, let me give you another try. So I'm going to do it all over again. So I do it all over again, and I flip, and I'm in a whole different chapter, and my finger lands on, if your hand offends you, cut it off. It's better to go into heaven with one hand than to hell with two hands. And at that point, I was like, whoa, God is speaking to me, and I can't ignore it at this point. So I'm starting to get really anxious and feel like this is God, and I don't know what to do with that. So I start to get this anxiety, and this thought comes in my head, call your mom. And it's about 3:00 in the morning at this time. So I'm like, I'm not going to call my mom right now. Like, I'm not going to wake her up. And I just get this really strong impression. She would be so happy to hear you're reading the Bible. It doesn't matter. Call your mom. Call your mom. So I'm like, okay, mom. I call her. She's like, what? And I go, I know this is kind of out of the blue, but I'm reading my Bible. And remember, you told me that if I ever get lost, to open up the Bible and God would lead me out and speak to me. And she goes, yeah. I go, I think he's speaking to me. And she goes, really? And I go, yeah. And then all of a sudden, I'm in my bed, and my hands go to the top of the bed, and my feet go to the bottom of the bed. And it feels like something has got me strapped to the bed, even though I can't see it. I can't move. I'm restrained. And so all of a sudden this voice comes out of me and I say, I hate you, bitch.